Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sarona Ventures podcast series and our special edition with Tech Shield. And today, I'm very honored to have a dear friend of mine and a brilliant AI researcher, expert, founder of two companies, took one public, sold the other, and he has so much more. So, Eli David, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
How are you today?
Great, doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all mine. I need to check that this is actually you and not an AI replica, right?
There is no way for you to verify that, actually. It is almost indistinguishable from reality.
Which one would I prefer to have? The real you or the AI you?
At some point, it wouldn't matter because the fake me or the fake version of any of us will be just indistinguishable. It will know all our pros and cons and will mimic that to the extent that you cannot recognize the difference. So it wouldn't actually matter.
Haha, but I felt you though. Now I know it's actually you.
Maybe.
All right. So Eli, maybe we just start with you sharing, who you are, what did you do before, how did you get to where you are today, and just a nutshell of who is Eli David.
Well, Eli David is just a teenager whose dream was to become the world chess champion. That's essentially Eli David. But when by the age of 16 or 17, I didn't become a chess grandmaster, I figured out that I'm too old to ever have a chance of becoming a human chess world champion. So, in Israel, we have a saying, what do you do if you don't get accepted to become a pilot? You go to the anti-aircraft missiles division. I don't fly, nobody flies. So essentially, at the age of 17, I decided that if I'm not going to become the world chess champion, I will build a chess program that will defeat all these humans. And that's how I started my journey into AI. And for the past almost 25 years, that's what I do, AI.
I love it. And so, did they win?
My program reached the second place in the World Computer Chess Championship. So almost there.
Almost there. Yeah.
Some other things ended up much better than I could have imagined in my best dreams. Now, 20-something years ago, I started pursuing neural networks, a subfield of AI that essentially tries to mimic our brain. What our brain does with real neurons, we do it with artificial neurons. Back then, it was considered an almost refuted field of study, that nobody in his right mind would even get close to it. Today, this is the main AI, and all the breakthroughs we've seen in recent years are solely due to neural networks. So I was extremely lucky to pursue 20 years ago a field that ended up becoming the center of all AI breakthrough.
Do you think that's more luck or planning?
I can brag about this being planning, and I foresaw the future. Now let me tell you a story about that. In 2004, I organized a major AI conference in Israel. There was a very nice Dutch journalist who interviewed me and asked me, will we ever have superhuman AI? I told him, yeah, of course we will have. We're a bunch of cells. So at some point, we will figure out how the brain works, we will mimic it, and we will have superhuman AI. So he asked me, when will that happen? I said, well, in 500 years. It's always good to predict when I'll be dead, he will be dead, our children will be dead. Nobody just made up something. But he went and made the headline, Israeli AI researcher, in 50 years, we will have superhuman AI. It just dropped to zero. And I became the subject of all the jokes in the AI community. But today, I hold on to that piece of paper and say, look, I was the first one who predicted this AI revolution. So I had the conviction, but in my best dreams, I wouldn't have imagined that in 20 years from when I started, we will have almost human-level AI, which is the state we are right now.
Which is absolutely insane. And so you're not just a brilliant techie, right? I mean, you're also a very successful entrepreneur, and you've built 2 companies. Can you share with us a little bit about the companies you built? What did they do, and how the success came about?
Certainly. So when I co-founded Deep Instinct, today one of the leading cybersecurity companies in Israel, the idea was to do, again, the only thing I know how to do, AI. And back then, in 2015, AI was already being successfully deployed by Google, Facebook, Microsoft for computer vision, for speech recognition. And our idea was, why not take the same kind of deep neural networks and apply them to a field that nobody's applied it before, on computer files, to detect if a file is a virus, a malware, or a legitimate file. Of course, that was much more challenging because the computer files are not made of pixels. They are much more complex. But with the training data that is large enough, hundreds of millions of files, large infrastructures, it ended up working. And actually, that was one of the points that since then, I have the absolute conviction that no matter how challenging the task is, given enough data and the correct type of data and good infrastructure, AI can reach good results, superhuman results. And so the neural net we built then was the core engine behind everything we do there to this day. The other company I co-founded was DeepCube. Again, the prefix was deep. Trying to take inspiration from our own brain. Now, one of the problems we have in today's AI is that it's very energy intensive. When we train something like the GPT-4, it requires tens of thousands of GPUs, graphics processing units. Each one of them, hundreds of watts energy, about 500, 600 watts of energy. Our brain at peak performance doesn't use more than 30 watts, 30. So our brain is extremely efficient algorithmically. It is extremely sparse. When I show you a picture of a cat, only a small fraction of your brain gets excited by that input. But when I show a state-of-the-art AI model to that picture of a cat, most of the brain gets excited and the energy usage accordingly. So in DeepCube, what we did, we essentially mimicked many of the things our brain does to make sparse neural nets, and we got back then about 10 to 20x speed up for state-of-the-art models like large language models, etc. And we sold the company 3 years ago.
You're coughing because it's true.
Maybe.
Congrats to that. I mean, it's really amazing. So you grew up in Israel, right? Obviously, you've had a pretty international career so far, but you're Israeli, and I mean, it's enough to look at your Twitter feed to understand where you stand on that. What do you think is the difference between Israeli entrepreneurs and global entrepreneurs when it comes to AI, right? I mean, there are many different disciplines, and we both know that Israeli tech and Israeli entrepreneurs are superior in many, many other domains, right? But specifically here, because you're a clear domain expert in AI, what do you see in Israel and what you see in the world? How do they differ?
The Israeli mindset that is commonly called the startup nation, it's essentially all about looking at a problem that is extremely difficult, or preferably commonly known as impossible to do, and then try to find some way around that. Very quickly, cheaply, a bit hectically, and just get it done. Find a solution. And that works everywhere. Cybersecurity and AI, software development, almost every field that you see that the Israeli tech, which is second after the US, not per capita, but by absolute numbers. The only reason is that from the moment we are born in this country and we grow up, that's the mindset. Well, go figure it out. You have a problem, tough luck. Go find it. That's what we do at school. That's what we do in the university. That's what we do from the founding of this country. in 1948. After all, the founding of this country was a kind of startup in itself. You were in the middle of nowhere with all your neighbors' enemies that they just want to kill you and throw you into the sea. Tough luck. Figure it out. Find a way around that. And that is the common denominator of, I think, everything that's Israeli. And even since October 7th, that the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, of course, it's terrible, and we're still in the middle of a terrible war. But again, when I talk to fellow entrepreneurs and the technology people, we're all fully motivated to overcome this struggle, to become even stronger and more resilient as a result of that, because that is the only reason and the only legitimacy for us to live here. The moment we decide that we are abandoning that kind of startup nation and problem-solving attitude, frankly, we don't have any reason, we won't have any possibility to survive here, whether that's our state or technology or startups. So that's the common denominator in everything in this country.
Basically, we're stubborn and and stupid.
Yes, one can argue it that way. I mean, there is somebody from a different peaceful country can say, "Why are you there? Why not just live peacefully in some corner of the world in New Zealand? It's a very beautiful place, but it is not my place." So just like I imagine a British person, wherever they live, they still care about Britain. A French, wherever they live, they still care about France because that is their country. That's the same case for Jews. I may be a Jew living in Israel or in UK or in the US, but Israel is as much my country as France is the country of the French, wherever they may be and wherever they live. So we have no other option but to fight for what's important for us. And fight is not just in the war. Fight for the economy of this country, for the technology of this country, for scientific breakthroughs. All of that is the main part of this country and being part of this country.
That's amazing what you're saying. And I think you so much you touch the point. I'm going to ask this question from a different angle. You were saying that, in fact, Israel is not a country of 9 million people. It's a country of 24 million people because we count every single Jewish person around the world as a person that is associating themselves with the country and wants to support the country in any way possible. When you were doing your researches and you've been dedicating quite a few years to do research, what were the type of people that were financing your research? Is that the same type of people that want to see Israel succeed, or it's coming from different sources regardless?
I don't think, at least in my experience, that I raised funds from of many times seed, round A, B, C, D, and E, from different VCs and private equities, Israelis and non-Israelis. Maybe, and I think in many cases there were actual sympathy for Israel and the wish to see Israel being a successful country, but I don't think this was the main reason or even one of the main reasons in any of the rounds I raised funds. And I think that's good. If somebody starts funding a company of mine just because I'm Israeli, that is a recipe for failure, because in today's world, you don't get far by sympathy. You get far by excellence. So when I am going to raise funds from West Coast BC, even if they are Jewish, even if they are sympathetic to Israel, I would expect them to rigorously and coldly evaluate me and invest in a company of mine if they think they will see massive upside and reject me with all the due sympathy if they don't think so. I think that is the case for almost all the companies here.
I love what you're saying. And when it comes to excellence, what do you think? You're also an investor looking at different companies. What do you think makes Israeli companies excellent?
The good thing about capitalism is that the measure of success is quite objective. It's not some subjective, philosophical, spiritual thing. You build a company from scratch and you IPO'd it, and it becomes a major company with lots of revenue and employees and customers all over the world. That is success. I even don't care what you've built. The fact that you have so many customers, it means that you have addressed a relevant problem and you have addressed it correctly. Nobody pays for your product, for your solution, because they like you. Maybe they give you good words, but not money. If they buy your product, you have built something useful, and that's the measure of success. That's why sometimes I talk to contact from the Israeli government, from European Union, and they ask me, how can the government support the ecosystem? And sometimes I'm trolling them, and I'm intentionally giving a more cynical answer than what they completely believe. But usually my answer is, you want to help? Just stay aside. Don't bother. Government is usually just harming things. Let the free economy work out. If I'm building a good product, just remove the bureaucracy for me. Reduce the regulations. Let me succeed or fail on my own. And that is the only metric that matters.
Amen. I'm curious to hear a story from one of your companies, like one of the entrepreneurial journeys that you've had, where you felt like you're reaching almost a dead end or that things are not solvable. And then given this Israeli resilience, giving this not giving up mentality, giving this workaround approach, you actually solve that and move forward and have managed to reach the success that ultimately we know you had.
One story, if I start sharing stories, the stories of almost failure or complete failures and then pivoting, we need to talk for several hours. Now,
we can definitely do more of those.
Every entrepreneur, even the most successful ones, I'm sure there are many stories of failure. For example, in Deep Instinct, we started based on my maybe naive approach that, deep neural networks, they work for computer vision, for speech, for text. Why shouldn't they work for computer files? So we spent a few months, almost a year, building an infrastructure, gathering data, and then nothing works. Absolutely nothing works. And then we try to understand why. The patterns are different. Look at the image. When you look at me, if there's a certain pixel that is navy colored, most probably the adjacent ones are also navy. There is correlation in the space. In all images, you have those correlations. Now open a computer file as if it were an image. No correlation. Looks like just random bits of ones and zeros. Or what happens if I give you two images of different sizes and you want to feed them into an AI model that has fixed input size? You just resize them to a predetermined fixed size. But I can have a computer file that's 100 kilobyte or 10 megabyte. We try just resizing them as if they were images. Complete failure. Absolutely didn't work. So what do? We tried many different things. We ended up spending almost a whole year after that failure developing an entire deep learning framework that can find non-local correlations, to find those kind of distant correlations in computer files. We developed complete neural network stack and architecture for varying input sizes. And later on, NVIDIA got excited by that. They became one of our major investors. They selected Deep Instinct in 2017 as the best AI company in the world. But that was 2 years after we founded the company. 2 years of almost continuous failures. And, the lesson I learned from that is not just tenacity. And that goes without saying. Another important lesson that when I speak to first-time founders and they brainstorm with me about which idea they should pursue, what I always say is that you must be passionate about the idea. Don't select that idea just because you think you have a good solution for a good problem and you can make lots of money. Because no matter how good the problem is, no matter how good your solution is, you will hit a brick wall. After 3 months, after 6 months, or after 2 years, you will hit a brick wall. You will be miserable. If you're passionate about the problem, your love of the problem will make you go through that. You will suffer and continue. Just like Winston Churchill said, once they asked him, how do you define success? He said, going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. That enthusiasm part is the key word here. If you're passionate, your enthusiasm will carry you through. If you're not enthusiastic about a problem, you're dealing with the boring problems. For you, it is considered a boring problem. You will either give up or you will not be able to summon the stubbornness, the tenacity to go through that miserable period of failure. That's, I think, the most important lesson I learned.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And we see that so often, right, happening where founders are not passionate enough and then they just quit. They just quit. I have a question for you. We started this conversation in a bit of a future telling, right? So I'm going to start summing it up also towards future telling. When you look at Israel, so Israel have gone through a pretty difficult time in the past. I would say even three years, right? We've had COVID, which shuffled the cards. Then we've had down markets, which made it very difficult for a lot of companies, including a lot of layoffs and difficulty to raise capital and decreased valuations. And then now the October 7th attack and the war that followed. What do you think is coming at us over the next 3 years?
Actually, I'm quite optimistic. Not despite all these reasons, but partially due to all these reasons. And I think I think it was, maybe I'm mistaken, but I think it was Warren Buffett who said, when the tide goes out, you finally see who has been swimming naked.
Mm-hmm.
When the economic situation is all good and anyone with a PowerPoint full of spelling errors can raise major seed rounds, nowadays we call them pre-seed, then there is no difference between somebody who is more qualified and less qualified. And they build something that has no reason to exist and they raise money again and again at good valuations. So at some point it doesn't matter until the tide goes out, which happened for the entire world during COVID and the economic recession, or not officially recession, but almost recession. In Israel, on top of that, we have the current war that many in the tech community are either in the reserve or we have employees that are doing the reserve duty, but it's building part of our resilience. Well, the cards are, all your cards are not aces. Tough luck. Find a way around that. Find a good solution. And I think we will come stronger out of this. I see many Israeli companies in challenging situation. They have difficulty raising funds now. They have difficulty with their burn rate, but they're finding creative solutions, ingenious solutions. And if they can successfully grow up to this period, it's all waves, it's up and downs. We will be again in the situation of global economic prosperity for the whole venture industry and us entrepreneurs as the recipients of the venture funds. We will be there, but we will be there much more resilient. And ultimately, I think some of the biggest companies of the world, and not just in Israel, are being built right now in the current situation. And my hope and belief is that many of them are right now being initiated here in Israel.
Amen to that. Really. Is that a feeling that you have, or is it based on things that you see, like companies you meet, founders you speak with?
I would like to say it's entirely based on the facts that I see, but maybe there is some hope entangled in that as well. But does it matter if it's hope and facts together? That's all about the Israeli dream and what we're doing. The amazing founders, brilliant founders that they're, for example, right out of their military service, they have done amazing work there, and they're bringing all that mentality and capabilities. We're starting new companies. These are the bright people that there is no reason why they shouldn't build the next multi-billion or even hundreds of billion-dollar companies of the future. So I do have both belief, but I don't think it's solely based on hope. I think it's mostly based on the facts I see on the ground.
We are, in fact, a nation of fighters, right? I mean, a large percentage of the people in the country are either serving in the military or are dedicated to study and trained to dive deeper and ask more questions. What do you recommend to global investors in this landscape that are passionate about Israel? You know, they could be Jewish or non-Jewish, but they understand the technology that's taking place in the startup nation, and they see the successes that have came out and the billion-dollar companies that are growing, led by Israeli founders. And following October 7th, they are in kind of a defense mode, right? I mean, they guard their finances. There is a very high interest rate, so maybe it's not exactly the right time to put their money into tech. But on the other hand, there are opportunities, and they know the strength of the Israeli ecosystem. You're an investor yourself. You've been also on the shoes of looking at other founders and trying to think, are they the right place for me to put my money? What would be your recommendation or suggestion, advice to the global investors community in respect to the Israeli ecosystem?
Historically, the best times for investing in new companies, especially early stage companies, is in the periods of economic distress or geopolitical distress. Now, if there is an investor who thinks, well, maybe Israel ceased to exist as a result of this war, well, then don't invest in Israel. If somebody is so crazy, don't invest here. But safely assuming Israel will come out victorious from the current war, and Israel is here to stay, the Israeli tech community is here to stay, and the pool of young Israeli talent is here to stay, then this is the best time to invest in Israel, especially since the valuations are not inflated as they were 2 years ago. Again, myself being in the shoes of an angel investor, I see that the valuations are much more reasonable right now. And actually, right now, I find much better opportunities to invest at reasonable valuations than 2 years ago. Of course, investors can decide to stay on the sideline, wait another year, wait for the valuations to go up, and then decide to come back and invest, as they will eventually come back and invest because they want to invest at the best technology, and we have one of the best tech ecosystems in the world. So they will come and invest. I'm not concerned about that. My only recommendation to them would be, if you're going to invest anyway, then do so at better valuations for you, which is right now.
I agree. I see so many interesting stuff, and especially in your domain. I mean, that's the main thing that's going around, both in the Valley and here. Everyone are looking at AI stuff. So diving into that, your favorite topic of the day, what do you think is, let's say, 3 big AI trends that you would say, I think these are going to change our lives, and I think that people should invest there?
Actually, there is one trend that is going to change everything. And the trend is we are very close to AGI, artificial general intelligence, or in other words, superhuman AI. When I started my AI journey 25 years ago, I believed we will get there because there was absolutely no reason why not. Our brain is a computer, a bunch of cells, firing electricity to each other. Our neocortex, the smart part of the brain that's making the what makes us human, essentially, has about 100 trillion connections. That's the, let's call it, computational capacity of the brain, 100 trillion. And my belief was that the larger neural nets, artificial neural nets we managed to build with more computational capability, we will get closer to our brain. So it's essentially more about quantity, not quality. There was a big argument, of course, for many years in the AI community, but I think this argument is quite... the result of that is now there is an agreement. It's about quantity. And when OpenAI started building crazily big models, but first 10 billion parameters, 100 billion parameters, GPT-4, 1 trillion parameters, we see the results are just getting better and better. So my prediction is, within the next 2 to 3 years, at the most 5 years, we will have AI models which are with hundreds of trillions of connections or thousands of trillions of connections. These AI models, again, it can be GPT-5 or 6. Of course, not just GPT, the models by other companies as well. They will be superhuman. Superhuman doesn't mean just a smarter human. The gap between their intelligence and ourselves will be as wide or wider than the gap between our mental capacity and that of chimpanzees. The only difference between our brain and that of a chimpanzee is that we have more neurons. That's it. No other difference. Only quantity. So at some point, it can be 5 years from now, or it can be 20 years from now, but it will be within our lifetimes. We will look at these super intelligent entities just the way a chimpanzee is looking at us, from the point of view of trying to predict their actions. Now, this is a huge move. It will result in tremendous changes in the world. Our entire world will change. There will be many changes for the good. The biggest trend I'm bullish about is healthcare. Today's healthcare, an area I'm passionate about, is more or less primitive. You go and do a blood test, they come back a result. This is within normal range. That's within normal range. That's it. Good luck. Come back in a year from now. There are a huge amount of information there, but we're not using advanced methods to do that. I believe in personalized healthcare. Our long life expectancy will go past 100 years easily due to AI, due to detecting diseases earlier stage, drug discovery due to AI, better medical treatments due to AI. It will a complete revolution. In 30 years from now, I believe AI doctor will do everything. Diagnosis, treatment, even surgery, AI will do, not us. That's on the upside. On the downside, there are things I'm really concerned about. For example, autonomous weapons. At some point, we will get to the point that an autonomous drone is by orders of magnitude more accurate than us, not just in deciding who are the bad guys to target, but making sure not to target civilians inadvertently. When we see those numbers, would it be even a moral decision to let humans decide when we put more innocent humans at risk? There will be crazy dilemmas. What will happen if an AI would go rogue? And there will be AIs developed by Western countries, but there will be AI developed by, let's call them non-Western countries. And they will not have the best interests of many of us in mind. What will happen then? So sometimes I start thinking about these things, and I find myself down the rabbit hole, and I have no prediction of exactly what's going to happen. I just know that we're moving into several decades of complete shift in the world, more dramatic shift that we have seen in the past several centuries combined. My only hope, and I'm doing my best to be part of that, is that we will see much more good things as a result of AI, and we will be able to control and inhibit the risks of malevolent AI.
Wow. That is a lot. So should we be scared or should we be hopeful, or both? Should we be both? So, Eli, thank you so much. This was so inspiring and amazing. And you know how much I deeply appreciate you personally, professionally. So thank you so much for your time. And until the next time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.